What's happening, everybody? Boy Big Brando, and welcome back to Printing Money. If you didn't watch the previous episode, that's basically me walking you through my brainstorming process. So that's how I come up with the concepts. That's how I figure out who I want to sell t-shirts to. That's when I start really thinking about the design. That's where I start scheming up my marketing strategy. All of this stuff happens in my brain whenever I'm walking around anywhere. And if I see a void in the market where I could kind of insert myself and start making some money, that's exactly where my brain goes to first. So if you haven't watched it yet, make sure you go back and watch the first episode of Printing Money so you have a better idea on what I'm talking about here. But on this one right here, I'm going to be walking you guys through my design process. Now, when I say design process, this is just me turning my idea into a reality. But there's a lot that goes into this. A lot of us, we just have ideas and we'll sketch them down. For myself, I put them in the notes section of my phone. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll think of a good idea. I'll make a little note of what the idea is. And then I'll also break it down into who I think I could sell this design to, or how I should market this design, or how I could build on this design. These are just giving me small clues and hints. So when I go back to the notes page, I can see everything I was thinking about at that moment and then put it into the computer and try to bring it to life. So the first part of my design process is just coming up with the concept in general. Is it going to be an illustration? Is it going to be a witty phrase? Is it going to be just all text? What print method am I planning on using? Is it multicolor? Is it going to be a single color or double color print? Placement on the t-shirt. Do I want a front left chest print? Do I just want one big chest print? Do I want something on the back? All of this stuff is what I'm thinking about before I even sit down at the computer. Now, a lot of times, a lot of my designs start out as sketches, whether it's sketching on a piece of paper, whether it's sketching on my iPad. A lot of times it starts off with a rough general sketch, and then I start to fine-tune it on the computer. Then I go through the whole process of picking fonts, or should I use a standard font and manipulate it to make it look like what I'm visually seeing in my brain. If I can't find the font that's matching what I want it to look like, or if I'm drawing something, I'll do the rough sketch and then I'll redraw it in the computer using the pen tool. So in this case, for these churro t-shirts, I knew it was going to be all text on the back, and I knew the front I had to redraw some praying hands and put a churro in between those praying hands. So the first thing I did was I sketched up some praying hands. I looked at a lot of tattoos for reference, and then I sketched out my own praying hands, and then I made it holding a churro. Now, a lot of times when I'm doing something like this, I like to keep in mind, if I'm going to be cutting this out with vinyl, that I don't want to add too many details where it's going to be a long time for me to weed all that stuff up. So I try to keep it very general, and the parts that I'm weeding up, I like to keep it in really big pieces. So that way when I weed it up, I could weed up one big piece and I don't have to get into all the little holes and gaps and negative space and stuff like that. I also knew that it was going to be a single color print on a black t-shirt, so I wasn't going to get too detailed with the shadows and shading of the actual hands, but I did put small details in there so you could see the veins, you could see the knuckles, and you could see the ridges in the churro. Now, this is where having a design focus group comes in clutch. If you don't already have this, I highly suggest you start doing this. Now, the way my focus group works is I use Snapchat, and I have a handful of friends and family that I value their opinion, and they come from all different walks of life. Not everybody is into what I'm into, but they all do have a creative eye, and they are all free thinkers. Nobody in this group is a yes man. Everybody is brutally honest, and everybody gives very good constructive criticism. So this is why I really rely on this focus group, is because if I show them a picture of something that I'm working on and they say that's trash, I fully understand that that's trash. But that's not where the conversation stops. If somebody says that's trash, they'll give me a bunch of different reasons why they feel that design is trash. Or if it's a winner, they'll tell me, that looks good, that'll be easy to market to these people, are you going to be selling it to these people? So that way you can feel out if they're thinking exactly what I'm seeing, right? Because it's easy for somebody to just be like, oh, that design's trash, and give you no context about it. What makes it trash? Why don't you like it? What don't you like about it? What can I change? That's where the criticism really comes into play, and it helps me out as the designer to make these adjustments and rework the design. So like I said, I have 10 to 15 people on this Snapchat. We all use this group for the same exact thing. Not everybody does design. A lot of people do music, a lot of people do poetry, a lot of people do a bunch of different things in there. Everything from acrylic painting to spray painting and graffiti to pinstriping and airbrushing, t-shirt designs, logo work, all of this stuff. These are just a bunch of my friends and family that do creative stuff. So as I'm working on this hand with the churro, I take a picture of it and I send it to this Snapchat group. And then I let everybody chime in. Then they start letting me know what they think about it. And right out the gate, everybody really understood. Without even knowing the concept of what I was going for, everybody understood what I was doing. So that right there was a plus. Easy call. Now we needed to work on the back of the t-shirt, right? We needed to work on the actual text. During this time, I'm telling my Facebook group, not the Snapchat group, but the Facebook group that I have through Patreon. And that's exactly who I'm creating this brand for, so I could show Patreon exactly what I'm doing. That's the whole reason why I'm starting this. Outside of making money, outside of selling a good t-shirt, I documented everything for Patreon because I wanted Patreon to see everything that goes into this process whenever I'm starting a brand or selling a t-shirt or running this business. So after I do the praying hands, I send that off to the Snapchat group. It's a winner, I save it, I'm ready to print that thing. Now when I'm working on the back side, I'm telling my Facebook group, who's a part of Patreon, exactly the process that I use the Snapchat group for. So one of the big reasons I started the Facebook group through Patreon is because I wanted people to use the Facebook group exactly like I use my Snapchat group. So let's say you don't have 10 to 15 creatives in your life that you could share and trust their actual opinion. I created that Facebook group for other clothing designers to share their designs and then get feedback from it. That's what I used it for. That's what a lot of people in the group use it for. I mean, outside of that, we do a lot of other stuff and share tips and tricks, and people are helping other people when it comes to finding vendors, when it comes to different blanks that we're using, different marketing strategies, just documenting everybody's journey, who's working on what, who's doing what, who has shows coming up, how they're decorating their vendor booth. All of that stuff can be found in this Facebook group. And the only way to get into the Facebook group is through Patreon. Now, outside of that, while I was telling the Facebook group about how to use a creative focus group and all that stuff, I said, let me show you how this works. So what I did was I came up with the back design, right? Remember, it was gonna say in love and memory, just like those old rest in peace shirts from the 80s and 90s. So it was gonna say in loving memory of all the churros I'm about to eat. Standard Old English font, but there's a lot of Old English fonts out there, right? So I mocked it up, knew exactly how I wanted it to say it. So it said in loving memory, arced across the top, and then everything else was stacked up underneath. I wanted churros to kind of stand out, so that was gonna be bigger text, and then everything else was gonna be a little bit smaller. Easy call. I took a picture of it, and then I uploaded it to the Facebook group, not the Snapchat group, the Facebook group. Now the people of Patreon are starting to see the power behind using a focus group, because everybody chimes in, right? Everybody says this looks cool, this doesn't look cool. But what I did was I picked a font that I wasn't too sure about, just to see who was going to give me honest feedback and who was going to be just a yes man. So the font that I picked, it had like a weird little squiggly line on the bottom of the H that I personally hated. I really disliked. So that's the font I chose to upload to Facebook so I could show them. And right away there was a bunch of cool people on there that were like, hey, you know what, that thing throws me off, that little squiggly line, maybe you should take that off. And that was my thought all along. And there were a few people that were like, yeah, that looks cool, you should run it, blah blah blah. There's nothing wrong with that also. But in order for the focus group to work, everybody has to be brutally honest. And like I said, they have to provide some sort of context behind their opinion. You know what I mean? So if somebody says, hey, that looks good, why does it look good? Hey, that looks like garbage, why does it look like garbage? What can I change? What can I improve? What shouldn't I change? You see what I mean? And for a reference, hopefully you could see this, but here's the Facebook post. I don't even know if you could see the actual date, but this was in 2018. And there's that little squiggly line underneath the H, if you could see that. There's also one in the, but that little line right there is what I disliked. So now the group is starting to see the power behind this focus group, right? It's going to help the creative process. It's also going to help you fix some things so you can have the best result. So this is why I'm really big on having these focus groups. A lot of my designs get ran through my Snapchat group, which is just like I said, it's a private group just between me and my friends and family, because I value their opinion. So if you do not have a focus group currently, you can always build one up through Instagram. You can always build one up amongst your friends. Find other creative creators with like minds that are willing to do this. You know what I mean? Like I said, it only helps if everybody is 100% honest within that group. So that way you can put out the best possible product. So after the notes from everybody in the Facebook group talking about they don't like that little squiggly thing, obviously I didn't like it either. I went back and I searched for an Old English font where I liked all the letters. Everything looked pretty good. And on top of that, I personally visually really like all the text to be lowercase. Whenever you have capital Old English letters, it always has a different look and a different size than the rest of the letters. So I wanted to keep everything lowercase so everything kind of looked the same size and looked very cohesive. And then this was the actual t-shirt. So no more squiggly line under the H. Everything's lowercase the way I wanted it. Everything's stacked up the way I wanted it. And then I created the mock-up in Photoshop. And for visual reference, here is the front of the shirt if you haven't seen it. So there's the praying hands holding a churro. So that's the front of the shirt, and there's the back of the shirt. Now that the design was done and the mock-up was done and everything looked good to me, I felt comfortable with the design. Now it's ready to start testing it out. All right, hopefully this right here helps you guys out. If you do not have a focus group, I highly recommend it. It'll help with a lot of stuff, but remember, everybody in that group has to be very honest. You could be sending these pictures to somebody that's like a tastemaker in your life, or somebody that's like a trendsetter where they kind of know what's cool and what's not cool and you value their opinion. It could also be somebody that's not even directly into the same exact thing that you're trying to offer. So it's always good to have some outside eyes looking at something. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to be into it, but their opinion on what looks visually appealing can really help you out also. And then it also can be other people that are just into creating t-shirts and creating t-shirt designs. Sometimes another set of eyes might help you see something that you directly don't see when you're staring at the screen for like an hour or two. So sometimes it could be a matter of something looking unbalanced. Sometimes it could be something that's off-centered, or sometimes it could be very small stuff like add a drop shadow, add a thicker stroke, maybe change up the font but keep the words, or even it could just be squeezing all the letters together or spacing them out. These kind of things help you out. So like I said, this is something I go through all the time when I'm working on a design. Say if I'm stuck and I know it needs something else but I don't know what to add, I'll take a picture of it, send it to that Snapchat group. Everybody in there can kind of chime in and let me know what it's missing, or if I don't need to add anything to it and I'm just overthinking it. It helps to surround yourself with other creatives to sharpen your skills. Hopefully this video right here helps somebody out, and hopefully this makes a lot of sense to anybody watching. If you got any questions, make sure you leave it in the comments. Follow me on Instagram, Big Brando TV. If you wanted to be a part of my Facebook group, the only way to enter is through Patreon. So check out the Patreon link in the description if you wanted to get involved with that. A lot of cool people in there. Like I said, if you didn't have a focus group of your own, you can use that Facebook group as that also, or just use it to soak up some knowledge. It's up to you. All right, catch you guys on the next one, man. Yeah.